Number 89. I dipped my hand into a bag of coffee beans and it felt calming. Those little beans pressed against your fingers, it felt like rebellion. Putting my hand into something that should be pure, straight from the roaster who cracked the beans over fire. The rush that followed could have been the contact rush from the little coffee beans, or the thrill of breaking tiny rules and savoring the freedom. Hi, I'm Kaye Spivey, and happy April 1st! Happy April Fool's Day! I tried to think of something funny or punny or some kind of joke to play, and I'm terrible at that kind of thing, so I didn't do it. But I thought I would go ahead and read a poem that I really enjoy, that I think kind of is a bit more whimsical. This is by William Matthews. This is my favorite William Matthews poem. It's called Inspiration. Rumpled, torpid, bored, too tasteful to rhyme lethargy with laundry, or too lazy. I'll not spend my afternoon at the desk cunningly weaving subjunctives and lithe skeins of barbed colloquial wire. Today, I loathe poetry. I hate the clotted dicty poems of the great modernists, disdainful of their truant audience. And I hate also proletarian poetry with its dutiful rancors and sing-along certainties. I hate poetry readings and the dreaded verb to share. Let me share this knife with your throat, suggested Mac. Today, I'm a gnarl, a knot, a burl. I'm furled in on myself and won't be opened. I'm the bad mood. If you try to cheer me out of it, I'll smack you. Impasse is where I escape from. It takes a deep belief in one's own ignorance. It takes, I tell you, desperate measures. I just love that one. I think that that's a fantastic poem. So, if you've been on track for the 100 Poems in 100 Days challenge, this is the final stretch, the final 10 poems. We're at day number 91 today. That's a lot of poems. This was a massive endurance challenge, and I don't think that in my head I saw this as big a struggle as it really ended up being. A lot of the poems that I wrote turned out kind of meh, but that was to be expected. It's just about getting into the habit and writing daily, and sometimes I didn't write daily. Sometimes I was really bad at keeping up with the schedule, but I always made sure that I was at least close to the goal by the end of the week so that I could give an honest video for you guys. It's kind of both intimidating and a little bit sad that we're getting so close to the end. We're gonna reach 100 poems in just 10 days. April 10th is the last day of this challenge. But on a happier note, today is also the first day of National Poetry Month. If you decided to just jump in for that, that's going to be 30 poems in 30 days. And it starts right now, so get out your pen and paper, or if you like to type. I haven't really talked about my method, how I write poetry. How I novel is entirely on computers, but when I write poetry, I tend to handwrite. It doesn't matter if I'm using pen, pencil, but I like to write my first drafts in my beat up old journal. And I just write exactly what's coming to me, and I tend to go and read it back at least twice right after the initial writing and make any small changes that just weren't working. Then I try to leave the poem alone for as many days as possible. For this challenge, because I'm trying to read poems at the end of the week, I attempt to give myself at least a day. I try not to read poems that I just wrote unless I felt like they were still really strong. Sometimes I regret that. But I try and let the poems sit in my journal for at least a week. Usually more like 2 weeks, or I'll go back through my journal sometimes and find poems that I really, really like that I had forgotten about. And that's always fantastic. I love finding old poems that I didn't think were as valuable at the time as I later found them to be, that they weren't as well written at the time as later I found that they very much were very well written, and that's always super exciting. So after the poem has sat in the journal for a little bit, I'll read through and do any other little corrections that I feel like are necessary in the journal, and then I'll move it to my computer. And when I type everything out, I'll typically read it through once and then I save everything into the same folder. At the moment I actually have 3 folders going on. I have a folder for poetry that has been published, so that I know to stop messing with some of it, or if I want to add it to something, I know that that has been published. And so, like, for my upcoming poetry book, a few of the poems that are going to be in it have been previously published, and so I know that they're separate, so I can make the appropriate acknowledgements when I actually get the book all set and together. My other folder is for this challenge, so I can keep the poems from the 100 Poems in 100 Days challenge together. Typically I've only typed up the ones that I've read to you guys, although I'm thinking about typing up all of my favorites once I go back through at the end. So that may still happen, we'll find out. And then my other folder is just all my poems, and a lot of those poems date back quite a ways. So mostly they stick around because I don't want to dismiss them. Sometimes I'll come back to a poem and be like, this was almost good, and if I just work on it a little more, it'll be great. And I like being able to go back and do that with old poetry. So I keep a folder just with everything I've written. Sometimes I sort it so that the newest stuff pops up on top. If I'm, say, submitting to a journal, or if I'm looking for poetry for a book, I have a fairly good memory from what I've written, so I'll go back through and I know that I want poems that sound a certain way, that have a certain theme, and I'll look through and see if I can find those poems, or I'll search a keyword if that's what I'm looking for to help me spark memory of what the poems were about, and I'll pull up everything that fits into that category and then read through. And as I read through, I'm constantly doing revisions. I feel like revision is a very circular process, that every time you go back you start again and you go around in circles and constantly are coming back to cleaning things up and making things perfect. And sometimes it's just, what was I doing with the punctuation here, and getting rid of a comma or adding in a comma or changing my semicolons to things like that I'm just constantly working with and playing with. And sometimes the poem itself doesn't change very much, but maybe the way that it's read aloud will change. Anyway, so that's kind of my process. Let me know what your poetry process is. If you're the type of person who types things up first, let me know. If you're starting up for National Poetry Writing Month, congratulations, it begins now. I'm going to continue writing through the month. Even though the 100 challenge is going to end on the 10th, I want to keep pushing through for another 20 days. I guess this is also a good time to talk very briefly to you about why I sort of chose to do 100 poems. This was a very convenient time for me, this beginning of this year, starting on the 1st and ending on April 10th, because my fiance right now is training to be a national park ranger, and his training lasts through April. And I knew that that was going to happen, and I needed to have some extra projects to do since I wasn't going to be hanging out with him as much. He comes down on weekends because it's not that far away, but it's far enough that he hasn't been living at home. So I started this kind of as an extra thing for myself. Get some material written, have something to do. I decided to do videos because I thought that would be a lot of fun. After he finishes the academy at the end of April, we're potentially going to be moving. Hopefully he gets placed at a national park and gets to start a new job. We don't know. We don't know where we're going to be. We don't know if he's going to be working for a national park or a state park. We don't know any of that yet. After April, a lot of things are going to be up in the air. I don't know for sure if I'm going to be able to continue vlogging. I'd like to, especially if we move to a national park. This whole channel could take a totally different turn and I could just be doing videos of hikes every day or showing off how beautiful wherever we are is, because national parks are beautiful. And I'm really excited about the possibility of living in one. The poetry isn't going to stop. I think I'd like to talk more about books as well, novels and things I'm interested in. I'd like to do more of that in the future. We're going to see, because everything is up in the air. I don't know what I'm going to be doing at all because we don't know what he's going to be doing, and because of the situation I'm in, I made it so I would be very flexible to move wherever he needed to at whatever time. That's why I chose to do this challenge now. It was very convenient for me, and I'm glad that we're doing it. We're still doing it. It's not even done yet. This was a really hard time of year for any of you. If you had finals and things, if you were in school and it was particularly difficult, sorry that this wasn't maybe convenient for everyone. That's always the case. It's always the case, especially with a long challenge like this, that there are going to be inconvenient times. Those of you who stuck with it, congratulations. That's absolutely fantastic. Like, I'm so proud. I've already seen at least one person who started the challenge with me from the beginning, from the NaNoWriMo forums, finished super early, finished last week. Last week, this person hit 100 poems. Big shout out to A.A. McConnell from the NaNoWriMo forums. You are an inspiration. That is really fast to get done with 100 poems, almost 20 days early. That's so great. You were fantastic. Good job. And I think that's it for the video for this week. Thanks for joining me. Leave a like and subscribe. And give me a comment. Tell me about how you write poetry. Tell me if you're going to be participating in NaPoWriMo, National Poetry Writing Month, this month. I'll see you again next Saturday. Bye!